here are 3 teams that impressed me in the 2024 college football season. Now this is my list, and I want to see your list in the comments below. This is also not in any particular order, so let's get started. The first team that impressed me was Indiana. Now, they were coming off a 3-win season in 2023, and they had a brand new coaching staff, so the expectations weren't really that high, with Vegas putting their win total at 5.5 wins. Kirk Cignetti was the new coach at Indiana, and he was the coach at James Madison prior from 2019 to 2023, and he had an impressive 52-9 record for the Dukes. Kirk Cignetti was able to lead Indiana to their first ever 10-win season, and then adding an extra one on top, going 11-2, doubling their expected wins and over tripling their wins from last year. Indiana's only 2 losses came on the road against Ohio State and Notre Dame in the first round of the college football playoffs. I did criticize Indiana in my recent playoff video because these games were not that competitive, but I'm going to cut them some slack, since the only 2 teams they lost to were the teams that ended up playing in the national title game. Indiana also played Ohio State a lot closer than 2 of Ohio State's playoff opponents, Tennessee and Oregon, and you can't forget that they made the playoffs. Going from 3 wins to the college football playoffs is huge. It's a huge accomplishment, even in the 12-team format. They overachieved beyond all expectations. My only worry is I hope they don't end up like TCU after their playoff appearance, where they went 5-7 after making the title game the year prior. And also, Indiana did kind of have the benefit of having a relatively weaker Big Ten schedule. Because of how super conferences are now built, you're going to have some teams with stronger and weaker schedules. And Indiana definitely had a more favorable schedule. They didn't have to play Penn State. They didn't have to play Oregon. They did have to play both Michigan and Ohio State. Now, no one expected Michigan to take that as big of a fall off as they did. And that game was a lot closer than all the other Big Ten games that Indiana played. And then they did lose to Ohio State. But every other game they played, they did dominate. So that is one thing you have to give Indiana credit for. They did dominate in all the games that they should have won, especially with a huge win over Nebraska. I believe the score was 56-7. I'm pulling it up. 56-7. Yeah, that was the record. 56-7, blowing the brakes off Nebraska. I know Nebraska is not the greatest team, but they ended up making a bowl game, and they had some good wins as well. So to say that this Indiana team was pretty good and definitely flipped it around and was impressive, I definitely put them on the list for sure. Okay, moving on to the next team that impressed me. This is painful to admit, but the Florida Gators is the next team on my list, with their win total coming in at 4.5, coming off a 5-7 campaign in the year prior with the toughest schedule in the country. It wasn't a matter of if Billy Napier would be fired, but when. And after the first 3 games, it seemed like Napier's fate was sealed, getting blown out at home twice, once against Miami and another one to Texas A&M. It wasn't looking good, but after 2 wins against Mississippi State and UCF, they got back on track. And although they did lose their next 3 of their 4 games, they were playing pretty well, taking Tennessee to overtime on the road, with Graham Mertz sacrificing himself to allow DJ Lagway to be the starter for the remainder of the season, which was crucial to see if he was going to be the star that everyone predicted. And it looked like that, as he was able to lead the Gators to a dominant win over Kentucky, and then their next game, Florida was beating Georgia, and it looked like a huge upset was in the making. But then DJ Lagway got knocked out of the game, and Florida couldn't do anything on offense with their 3rd-string quarterback, allowing Georgia to come back. If Lagway played this entire game, they were going to beat Georgia. I stand behind it. With Lagway and other key starters out versus Texas, it was over before the game even started, so I'm just going to skip over that. And the game that would really determine Napier's future would be against LSU. Going into the game with a 4-5 record, they needed to win 2 of their next 3 games to make a bowl game. They went on to upset LSU and end their playoff and SEC championship hopes for good, with Ole Miss on deck. Now, this game was pretty ugly, with Ole Miss pretty much throwing the game away and allowed Florida to come out with another upset, and this one was against a top 10 team, crushing another team's playoff hopes in back-to-back weeks. And they're able to close out the season beating my Florida State Seminoles by 20, and then beating a skeleton crew that was Tulane, ended up winning 8 games, saving Napier's job and giving them some hype going into next year with DJ Lagway leading the offense. Again, if you told me that this Florida team would win 8 games, I would have laughed at you. but that's what ended up happening, and they definitely impressed me this year. One thing that I'm interested to see is, will DJ Lagway have a sophomore slump? Now, his numbers weren't crazy, but he had some pretty incredible plays. Just seeing the play, I think you shouldn't be looking at the stats to see how special of a player that DJ Lagway could be. I think he is the main reason why Billy Napier is still the coach. If Lagway wasn't really as promising as he was this year, they would have moved on from him. But the fact that he's playing well, he's locked into the Gators, this is it. This is Napier's way. This is how we can turn it around. So, yeah, that's definitely an impressive team. It hates for me to say that, because I think that I hope Florida loses all their games, but I have to I gotta recognize ball when I see it. So that's the next team. And then the final team for this video. This next team also ended up making the playoffs and ended up getting a bye in the process. I'm talking about no other team than the Arizona State Sun Devils. This was another team that went 3-9 the year prior, with their win totals lower than Indiana at 4.5. There were odds makers out there that were saying that 3.5 would have been a better number. They were also picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 by the media. But once the games got played, ASU was starting to prove the doubters wrong, starting off the season beating Wyoming, Mississippi State, and Texas State before losing their first game to Texas Tech by 8. They went on to win the next 8 of 9 games, finishing 11-2, and during this run, they took down a ranked Kansas State on the road, and then beat a ranked BYU team, and then winning out, clinching their playoff spot by destroying Iowa State in a de facto win-or-go-home Big 12 championship game, 45-19. ASU had breakout players on the offense, with Jordan Tyson being an elite #1 wide receiver that was playing really well before his season ended in the regular season against their rival Arizona. His quarterback Sam Leavitt was also having a breakout year in his first season as the full-time starter. And then lastly, their workhorse running back Cam Skattebo went off for 2,300 combined rushing and receiving yards and 24 touchdowns. And like I said before, not only did they make the playoff, but because the byes only went to conference champions, they were able to snipe the final bye and ended up playing Texas in the Peach Bowl. Now, this game felt like it was going to be another playoff blowout like we've been seeing in all the games prior, especially with Texas being up 17-8 going into the fourth quarter. But Arizona State, Cam Skattebo, Sam Leavitt, Arizona State's defense, they just locked in. And they were able to tie the game at 24-24 and almost gave them a chance to win before a missed targeting call forced the game to enter overtime, where in the second overtime, Texas was able to snuff out the fire once and for all. Again, getting 3 wins, making the playoffs, and getting a bye. Now, they didn't end up winning their game, but they had the most competitive quarterfinal matchup. They were able to come back against a very talented Texas team and were very close to winning the game. They took the lead in the first overtime. So it was insane to see that. It really reminded me a lot of the 2023 Florida State team, with Cam Skattebo being a Trey Benson, Sam Leavitt reminding me of Jordan Travis, and then Kenny Dillingham. He was the offensive coordinator at Florida State for a while. I'm really rooting for them. I hope they're a team that just continues to grow, and I know some of their players are gone, but it'll be exciting to see this team. I think the Big 12 is definitely the most exciting conference, just because there is no top dog. I mean, the fact that they went from worst to first, and this is like, we talk about that in the NFL a lot, going from the 4th place to the 1st place. They were at the bottom. Like, I think, how many teams are in the Big 12? What, 14, 16? They went from dead last to first. That's incredible. So those are the teams that really impressed me. And now I want to see your lists for the most impressive teams. I plan on making a follow-up video going over the most popular options, so make your voices heard. If you really think that this team impressed, put it out there. And, you know, if you're someone that really agrees with someone, you should put them on there too. I think that'll be a really cool way to kind of see what your guys' opinions on and really break it down. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, hitting the like button really helps me out, and also clicking on any related video on the side helps me out as well, because it lets YouTube know that you like this video. But other than that, this has been Jagnal, and I will see you guys next time.